The gunshot echoed through Red Canyon just as Nathan Decker spotted the woman lying crumpled against the sandstone wall, her dress torn, and her face streaked with dust and dried tears. He dismounted from his horse in one fluid motion, his weathered hands already reaching for his canteen as he approached the stranger who had somehow ended up in one of the most unforgiving stretches of Utah territory in the summer of 1878. "Madam." His voice was rough from days on the trail, but gentle. "Can you hear me?" Her eyes fluttered open, blue as the sky above them, and she gasped, scrambling backward against the rock face. "Please," she whispered, "please do not hurt me." Nathan raised his hand slowly, showing he meant no harm. "I am not going to hurt you. You are in Red Canyon, about 20 miles from Kingston. How did you end up out here?" The woman stared at him for a long moment, taking in his weathered face, the lines around his green eyes that spoke of 30 years spent under the desert sun, the dust on his leather vest and the pistol at his hip. Then her shoulders sagged, and she began to cry. "I was looking for a new life," she said, her voice breaking, "but I got so lost. I have been walking for 2 days, maybe 3, I cannot remember anymore." Nathan knelt down beside her, uncapping his canteen. "Here, drink slowly or you will make yourself sick." She took the canteen with trembling hands and sipped, then sipped again. He could see now that she was young, perhaps 23 or 24, with auburn hair that might have been beautiful before it had been matted with dust and sweat. Her dress had once been nice, he could tell, the kind of thing a woman wore when she wanted to make a good impression. Now it was torn at the hem and stained with red dirt. "What is your name?" he asked. "Natalie," she said. "Natalie Jennings. I came from St. Louis. I was supposed to meet someone in Salt Lake City, but the stagecoach broke down in Kingston, and I thought I could cut through to find another route, but I got turned around, and then my horse threw me and ran off, and I just kept walking thinking I would find someone, but all I found was more canyon and more rock, and I thought I was going to die out here." The words tumbled out of her in a rush. "Well, Natalie Jennings from St. Louis, you are lucky I came along when I did. This canyon can kill a person in a day if they do not know what they are doing." He stood and offered her his hand. "Can you stand?" She took his hand and he pulled her to her feet. She swayed slightly and he steadied her with a hand on her elbow. "When did you last eat?" "Yesterday morning. Maybe the day before. I had some bread in my bag, but I lost the bag when the horse threw me." Nathan walked back to his horse, a sturdy roan mare named Rosie, and pulled a package wrapped in cloth from his saddlebag. "Here. It is just dried beef and some hardtack, but it will help." Natalie took the food gratefully and ate like she had not seen a meal in a week. Nathan watched her carefully, noting the way she kept glancing at him nervously, as if she expected him to suddenly turn on her. He wondered what had happened to make her so skittish. "Who were you supposed to meet in Salt Lake City?" he asked. She paused in her eating and her face clouded. "A man named Robert Hutchins. We had been corresponding through letters. He said he had a good business and a house and wanted a wife. I thought it would be a fresh start after everything that happened in St. Louis." "What happened in St. Louis?" Natalie looked away. "My father died. Left debts I could not pay. I had no family left, no prospects. When Robert's letters came, they seemed like a gift from God, a chance to start over somewhere new." Nathan did not press her further. He had seen enough people running from their pasts out here in the territories to know that sometimes the best kindness was not asking too many questions. "Well, we need to get you back to Kingston before nightfall. It is not safe to travel through this canyon after dark." "I have no money," Natalie said quietly. "I had some saved, but it was in my bag with everything else I owned. I cannot pay you for helping me." "Did I ask for payment?" Nathan said, more sharply than he intended. He softened his tone. "Sorry." I am not in the habit of leaving people to die in canyons, regardless of whether they can pay me or not. Natalie's eyes filled with tears again. Thank you. I do not know how I can ever repay such kindness. Just stay alive. That will be payment enough. He untied Rosie's reins and gestured for Natalie to approach. You will have to ride with me. Are you able to mount? She nodded, and with his help, she managed to pull herself into the saddle. Nathan swung up behind her, settling his arms on either side of her to grip the reins. She tensed at the proximity, but he kept his touch professional, respectful. Hold on, he said. The path out of here can be rough. They rode in silence for a while, the only sounds the clop of Rosie's hooves on the rocky ground and the occasional cry of a hawk circling overhead. Nathan could feel the heat radiating from Natalie's sunburned skin, could smell the dust and sweat on her. But beneath that, he caught a faint trace of lavender, as if she had packed soap or perfume for her journey west. You said you were heading to Salt Lake City, Nathan said after a while. What made you stop in Kingston? The stagecoach driver said it would be 2 days to repair the wheel. I could not afford the hotel for that long, so I thought I would walk. Someone in town said there was a shorter route through the canyon that would take me directly north. I thought I could manage it. Whoever told you that was either a fool or trying to get you killed, Nathan said grimly. This canyon has claimed more than a few lives over the years. You were walking in circles. If I had not been tracking a stray calf through here, I never would have found you. Why were you tracking a calf through Red Canyon? Because I am a rancher, and even one calf matters when you are trying to keep a ranch running. He guided Rosie around a jutting boulder, and Natalie swayed against him. My spread is about 5 miles outside Kingston. Been running it for 10 years now, ever since I came out from Texas. You do not sound like you are from Texas. Nathan allowed himself a small smile. Good ear. I was born in Virginia, but my family moved to Texas when I was a boy. Learned to ride and rope there, learned to shoot too. When the war came, I fought. When it ended, I drifted west looking for something better, found it in Utah. Do you have family here? No. My parents died during the war. Brother was killed at Shiloh. It is just me and the ranch now. He paused, then added, and about 50 head of cattle, 4 horses, 3 dogs, and an ornery rooster who thinks he runs the place. That got a small laugh from Natalie, the first he had heard from her, and the sound pleased him more than he expected. That sounds like a good life, she said. It can be. It is hard work and lonely sometimes, but the land does not lie to you. You put in the effort, it gives back. You neglect it, it shows you the consequences real quick. They rode on, and gradually Nathan noticed Natalie relaxing against him. Her head drooped, and once or twice she nearly dozed off, catching herself at the last moment. He did not blame her. The woman had been through an ordeal that would have broken many people. Almost there, he said as they climbed out of the canyon and onto the flatter scrubland that surrounded Kingston. See those buildings on the horizon? That is town. I see them, Natalie murmured. Then more urgently, what will I do? I have nothing. No money, no belongings, no way to continue to Salt Lake City. One problem at a time. First, we get you to the doctor. Get you checked over, make sure you do not have heat stroke or anything worse. Then we figure out the rest. Kingston was not much of a town, just a main street with a general store, a saloon, a church, and a handful of other buildings scattered around. But it was home, and Nathan felt the familiar sense of ease that came with returning to familiar ground. He guided Rosie down the main street, aware of the curious looks from the handful of people who were out in the late afternoon heat. The doctor's office was a small building at the end of the street, and Nathan dismounted first before helping Natalie down. She stood on shaky legs, and he kept his hand on her arm to steady her as he knocked on the door, Doc Harrison answered, a thin man with wire-rimmed spectacles and a perpetually worried expression. Nathan Decker, what brings you to town at this hour? Oh my. He had spotted Natalie. What happened to this poor woman? Found her in Red Canyon. She has been lost for a couple of days, no food or water. I need you to check her over. Of course, of course. Bring her in. Doc Harrison stepped aside and Nathan helped Natalie into the office's small examination room. I will take care of her from here. You can wait outside. Nathan hesitated, suddenly reluctant to leave Natalie with someone else, even someone as trustworthy as Doc Harrison. But he nodded and stepped back out into the main room, closing the door behind him. He paced the small space, his boots loud on the wooden floor. Through the door, he could hear the murmur of voices, Doc Harrison asking questions in his gentle way and Natalie responding in tones too soft for Nathan to make out. He found himself wondering again about the man in Salt Lake City, this Robert Hutchins who had convinced a woman to leave everything she knew to come west to marry him. What kind of man did that? And what kind of man would Nathan be if he just sent Natalie on her way to meet him without knowing if Hutchins was decent or dangerous? The door opened after what felt like an eternity, and Doc Harrison emerged. She is dehydrated and exhausted, with some pretty severe sunburn. Nothing that will not heal with rest and proper care. But Nathan, she cannot go back out on the trail anytime soon. She needs at least a week to recover, maybe more. A week. Nathan rubbed his jaw. Does she know? I told her. She seemed quite distressed about it, worried about the man she is supposed to meet. I gave her some water and left her to rest for a moment. Doc Harrison fixed Nathan with a penetrating look. What are you planning to do? What do you mean? Are you just going to leave her here with me? Because I do not have the facilities to house a recovering patient for a week. I can check on her each day, but she needs somewhere to stay. Nathan felt a weight settle on his shoulders, but it was not an unwelcome one. She can stay at my ranch. I have an extra room and I can keep an eye on her while she recovers. Doc Harrison's eyebrows rose. That is mighty generous of you, Nathan. Folks might talk. Let them talk. The woman needs help, and I am not about to leave her to fend for herself. Nathan met the doctor's gaze steadily. Besides, it is only a week. Then she can be on her way, if you say so. Doc Harrison did not sound convinced, but he nodded. Go on in and tell her the plan. Nathan pushed open the door to the examination room. Natalie was sitting on the edge of a wooden chair, her hands folded in her lap. She looked up as he entered, and he could see the fear and worry in her eyes. The doctor says you need rest, Nathan said without preamble. You are welcome to stay at my ranch until you are well enough to travel. It is not fancy, but it is clean and safe. I cannot impose on you like that, Natalie protested. You have already done so much. You are not imposing, I am offering. He crossed his arms. Unless you would rather sleep in the street. No, but I do not want to be a burden. Then do not be one. Help out where you can if you are feeling up to it. I am sure there are things around the ranch that could use a woman's touch. He softened his tone. Look, Natalie, I understand you are trying to start a new life out here, but that does not mean you have to do everything alone. Out here, people help each other. It is the only way to survive. She looked at him for a long moment, and he could see the war playing out behind her eyes, pride battling with practicality. Finally, she nodded. Thank you. I accept your offer, and I will help however I can. Good. He turned to leave, then paused. One more thing. What are you going to tell this Robert Hutchins fellow about the delay? Natalie's face fell. I do not know. I was supposed to arrive in Salt Lake City 3 days ago. He must think I am not coming. Does he know where you were staying in Kingston? No, I never made it that far in the planning. I thought the stage coach would take me straight through. She twisted her hands together. Maybe it is a sign. Maybe I should not go at all. That is your decision to make, not mine, Nathan said. But you have got a week to think it over. Do not rush into anything just because you feel like you have no other choice. They left the doctor's office together, Nathan settling the bill over Natalie's protests. The sun was sinking toward the western horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. It would be dark by the time they reached the ranch. It is a short ride, Nathan said as he helped Natalie back onto Rosie. We should make it before full dark if we move quick. The ranch appeared as they crested a small rise, and Nathan felt a surge of pride despite himself. It was not much compared to the big spreads in Texas or Montana, but it was his. The main house was a sturdy log cabin with a stone chimney, and there was a barn, a corral, and a chicken coop scattered around the property. In the fading light, he could see his 3 dogs, a motley collection of mutts and herding dogs, running out to greet them. "Down," Nathan commanded as they dismounted, and the dogs immediately sat, though their tails continued to wag furiously. "This is Ace, Molly, and the little one there is Button. They are friendly, but they can be over-enthusiastic with strangers." Natalie knelt down and extended her hand, letting the dogs sniff her before she petted them. "They are beautiful," she said, and Nathan could hear genuine warmth in her voice. "Come on," he said. "Let me show you the house." The interior of the cabin was simple but clean. A single large room that served as kitchen and living area, with 2 doors leading to the bedrooms. Nathan had built it himself, along with some help from neighbors, and every log and board held memories of backbreaking work and small victories. "That is my room," Nathan said, pointing to the door on the left. "You will take the one on the right. It is not much, just a bed and a dresser, but the mattress is decent." Natalie pushed open the door and looked inside. The room was small, as he had said, but it had a window that looked out toward the mountains, and the bed was neatly made with a colorful quilt. "It is perfect," she said softly. "Thank you. There is a basin and pitcher on the dresser if you want to wash up. I will get some food going." He paused, suddenly awkward. "Do you need anything else?" "Just rest, I think. Today has been overwhelming." Nathan nodded and left her to settle in. He moved to the kitchen area and stirred up the fire in the stove, then set about making a simple meal of beans, bacon, and cornbread. It was not fancy cooking, but it was filling, and he figured Natalie needed substance more than flavor at the moment. She emerged from the bedroom about 20 minutes later, her face and hands washed clean of dust. Without the grime, Nathan could see that she was prettier than he had first thought, with delicate features and those striking blue eyes. She had taken off her torn dress and was wearing just her white undergarments, covered by the blanket from the bed wrapped around her shoulders. "I am sorry," she said, seeing his expression. "My dress is ruined and I have nothing else to wear. No need to apologize. I should have thought of that." Nathan turned back to the stove, trying not to think about the curves visible beneath the thin fabric. "I will ride into town tomorrow and see if Mrs. Fletcher at the general store has something that might fit you. I cannot pay for new clothes. Then consider it a loan. You can pay me back when you get settled." He dished up 2 plates of food and brought them to the rough wooden table. "Sit. Eat." They ate in silence for a few minutes, and Nathan watched as some color returned to Natalie's cheeks. She was hungrier than she had let on, he realized, eating with the single-minded focus of someone who had gone too long without food. "This is good," she said finally. "Thank you. It is just basic trail food, nothing special. It is the best meal I have had in days." She set down her fork and looked at him. "Why are you doing all this for me? You do not know me. I could be anyone." Nathan considered the question. It was a fair one. "I guess I am doing it because it is the right thing to do," he said finally. "And because I know what it is like to be alone and far from home with nowhere to turn. If someone had not helped me when I first came west, I would not have survived long enough to build this place. Who helped you? An old rancher named Tom Sullivan. Found me half-starved and desperate, took me in, taught me everything I know about running cattle and living off this land. When he died, he left me enough money to buy the land for this ranch. Said I reminded him of his son who had died in the war. Nathan stared at his plate. I figure helping you is a way of paying that kindness forward. Natalie reached across the table and touched his hand briefly. Then I will try to be worthy of it. The touch sent an unexpected jolt through Nathan, and he pulled back, suddenly uncomfortable. You should get some rest. Tomorrow will be a long day. She nodded and rose from the table, taking her plate to the basin. Good night, Nathan, and thank you again. Good night, Natalie. He watched her disappear into the bedroom, then sat alone at the table for a long time, staring at nothing. He had not expected to feel drawn to her, this lost woman from St. Louis with her sad story and her desperate search for a new life. He was 30 years old, set in his ways, and had long ago resigned himself to the idea that marriage and family were not in his future. The ranch was enough, he had told himself. The work, the land, the animals, they filled his days and gave him purpose. But now, sitting in his quiet cabin, he felt the weight of loneliness in a way he had not in years. He shook his head, clearing away the thoughts. Natalie Jennings was here to recover, and then she would be on her way to Salt Lake City to meet the man she was supposed to marry. Nathan was just a stopping point, a brief interlude in her journey. He needed to remember that. The next morning dawned clear and hot, the way most summer days did in Utah. Nathan rose early, as was his habit, and fed the animals before starting breakfast. He was frying eggs when Natalie emerged from her room, still wrapped in the blanket. Good morning, she said, and he could hear the improvement in her voice already. A night of rest had done her good. Morning. How are you feeling? Better. Still tired, but better. She came to stand by the stove. Can I help? You are supposed to be resting. I rested all night. I need to do something useful. She gave him a small smile. Please, I will go mad if I have to sit around doing nothing. Nathan relented and handed her a wooden spoon. Fine, you can stir the porridge, but if you start to feel weak, you sit down immediately. Understood? Understood. They worked together in comfortable silence, and Nathan found himself enjoying the company more than he expected. It had been a long time since he had shared his morning routine with anyone, and there was something pleasant about the small domesticity of it all. After breakfast, he saddled Rosie and rode into Kingston, leaving Natalie with strict instructions to rest and not to overdo it. The general store was quiet when he arrived, and Mrs. Fletcher, a plump woman with kind eyes and a tendency to gossip, greeted him with curiosity. Nathan Decker, twice in as many days. To what do I owe the pleasure? I need to buy some clothes for a lady, Nathan said, ignoring the way Mrs. Fletcher's eyes lit up with interest. A dress, some undergarments, whatever a woman needs. She is about this tall. He held his hand up to indicate Natalie's height. Slim build. And who is this mysterious lady? Mrs. Fletcher asked, already pulling fabric from the shelves. Her name is Natalie Jennings. I found her lost in Red Canyon yesterday. She is recovering at my ranch. Mrs. Fletcher's hand stilled. You have a woman staying at your ranch, Nathan Decker. What will people think? I do not much care what people think, Nathan said evenly. The woman needed help and I provided it. If folks want to make something ugly out of a simple act of kindness, that is their problem, not mine. Mrs. Fletcher studied him for a moment, then nodded slowly. You are a good man, Nathan. Not many would do what you are doing. She pulled out a simple blue dress and held it up. How about this? It is practical and the color would be lovely with auburn hair. How did you know she had auburn hair? Doc Harrison may have mentioned it when he came in for supplies this morning. Mrs. Fletcher winked. You know how small towns are. Nathan sighed but could not help smiling. The dress is fine, and whatever else she will need. He left the store half an hour later with a package of clothes and supplies, having spent more money than he probably should have, but feeling good about it nonetheless. As he rode back toward the ranch, he found himself thinking about Natalie again, wondering what she was doing, if she was resting like she should be, or if she had gotten restless and started exploring. He found her in the garden. It was a small plot behind the house where Nathan grew vegetables when he had the time and inclination. Lately, he had neglected it, and the weeds had taken over. But Natalie was there, still wrapped in her blanket, pulling weeds and organizing the plants that had survived. I thought I told you to rest, Nathan said, dismounting. Natalie jumped, then turned to face him. I did rest, for about 2 hours. Then I could not stand being inside anymore. She gestured at the garden. I hope you do not mind. I used to help my mother with her garden back in St. Louis. It felt good to work with the earth again. Nathan could not find it in himself to be angry. Just do not push yourself too hard. You are still recovering. I know my limits. She wiped her forehead with the back of her hand, leaving a smudge of dirt. Did you get the clothes? He held up the package. Mrs. Fletcher picked them out. I hope they fit. Natalie took the package and opened it, pulling out the blue dress. Her eyes widened. This is beautiful and far too expensive. It is what you need. Do not worry about the cost. She looked like she wanted to argue, but instead she just nodded. Thank you. I will go change. While she was inside, Nathan tended to Rosie, then walked around the property, checking on things and making mental notes of tasks that needed doing. His mind kept drifting back to Natalie, though, to the way she had looked in the garden with dirt on her hands and determination in her eyes. She was not what he had expected when he had first found her crumpled in the canyon. He had thought she would be fragile, helpless, but she was proving to be made of sterner stuff. She emerged from the house wearing the blue dress, and Nathan felt his breath catch. Mrs. Fletcher had been right about the color. It brought out Natalie's eyes and complimented her hair, which she had brushed and pinned up. She looked like a different person from the desperate woman he had found yesterday. It fits perfectly, Natalie said, smoothing down the skirt. Please thank Mrs. Fletcher for me. You can thank her yourself when you are feeling up to going into town. Nathan cleared his throat. There is work I need to do around the ranch. You are welcome to help if you want, but only if you are feeling strong enough. What kind of work? Mending fences, checking on the cattle, general maintenance. Nothing too strenuous. I would like to help, if you will teach me. So they spent the afternoon together, Nathan showing Natalie the basics of ranch work. She proved to be a quick learner, watching carefully as he demonstrated how to mend a broken fence rail and asking thoughtful questions. The work was slow going with her helping, but Nathan found he did not mind. There was something satisfying about teaching someone, about sharing the knowledge that Tom Sullivan had passed on to him. As the sun began to sink toward the horizon, they headed back to the house, both tired but in good spirits. Nathan made dinner while Natalie set the table, and they fell into an easy conversation about small things, nothing deep or meaningful, just the comfortable talk of two people getting to know each other. Tell me about St. Louis, Nathan said as they ate. What was it like growing up there? Natalie's expression grew wistful. It was beautiful, busy and loud and full of life. My father was a merchant and we had a nice house near the river. My mother died when I was young, so it was just the two of us for most of my life. She paused, her fork hovering over her plate. He was a good man, my father, kind and generous. But he was not a good businessman. He trusted the wrong people, made bad investments. By the time he died last year, there was nothing left but debts. I am sorry. So am I. She took a bite of food, chewing slowly. The house was sold, along with everything in it. I had nowhere to go, no skills that would let me support myself. That is when I saw Robert's advertisement in the newspaper. He was looking for a wife, someone willing to come west and start fresh. It seemed like the answer to my prayers. "Have you ever met him?" Nathan asked. "No, we have only corresponded through letters. He sent me a photograph, though. He looked nice. Respectable." She set down her fork. "But now I find myself wondering if I made a mistake. What if he is not the man he claimed to be? What if I get to Salt Lake City and he is cruel or dishonest?" "Then you leave," Nathan said firmly. "You do not have to marry anyone you do not want to marry, no matter what promises were made in letters." "But where would I go? I have no money, no family, no prospects. You would figure it out. People are more resilient than they think." He met her eyes. "And if you needed help, you could come back here. I meant what I said about people helping each other out here." Natalie's eyes glistened with tears. "You barely know me. Why would you make such an offer?" "Because it is the right thing to do," Nathan said simply. "And because I think you have been dealt a rough hand, and you deserve a chance to play it out without being forced into something you do not want." She reached across the table and took his hand, squeezing it gently. "You are a good man, Nathan Decker. Better than most I have known." The touch lingered longer this time, and Nathan felt something shift in his chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with the fire in the stove. He pulled his hand back slowly, reluctantly, and stood to clear the dishes. "We should get some rest," he said, his voice rougher than he intended. "Tomorrow will be another long day." That night, lying in his bed, Nathan stared at the ceiling and tried to sort through the tangle of feelings that Natalie had stirred up in him. He was drawn to her, there was no denying that. But she was promised to another man, and she was only here because circumstances had forced her to be. In a week, maybe less, she would be gone, continuing her journey to Salt Lake City and the life she had planned. He needed to remember that. Needed to keep his distance, maintain the boundaries that would keep both of them from getting hurt. But as the days passed, those boundaries became harder and harder to maintain. Natalie threw herself into life on the ranch with an enthusiasm that surprised and delighted Nathan. She learned to milk the cow, gather eggs from the chickens, and tend to the garden. She cooked meals that were far better than anything Nathan had made for himself, and she kept the house cleaner than it had been in years. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch and watch the sun set, talking about everything and nothing. Nathan taught her to ride, letting her take his gentlest horse out into the pastures. He showed her how to read the sky for coming weather, how to spot signs of predators near the livestock, how to fix a broken wagon wheel. And Natalie absorbed it all like a sponge, her quick mind grasping concepts that some people took years to learn. "You are a natural at this," Nathan said one afternoon as they worked together to move some cattle to a new grazing area. "You sure you were not secretly a ranch girl back in St. Louis?" Natalie laughed, and the sound was like music. "I am quite sure, but I like this work. It feels real, meaningful. Back home, I spent my days doing needlework and attending social functions that seemed important but never really were. This is different. What we do here matters." "It does," Nathan agreed. He watched her sitting on the horse, her face flushed from the sun and exertion, and felt his heart twist. She belonged here, he realized. She fit into this life, into his life, in a way he had not thought possible. And that terrified him, because in 3 days she would be well enough to travel. And then she would leave. That evening, as they sat on the porch watching the stars emerge, Natalie brought up the subject that had been hovering unspoken between them. "I have been here almost a week," she said softly. "I am well now, strong enough to travel." I suppose you are, Nathan said, keeping his voice neutral even though his chest felt tight. I should make arrangements to continue to Salt Lake City, to meet Robert as planned, if that is what you want. Natalie turned to look at him. Is it what you want? The question hung in the air between them, heavy with implications. Nathan could feel his carefully maintained walls crumbling, could feel all the things he had been trying not to feel rushing to the surface. What I want does not matter, he said finally. You made a commitment to this man. You came all the way out here to start a new life with him. But what if the new life I was looking for is not in Salt Lake City? Natalie's voice was barely above a whisper. What if I have already found it here? Nathan's heart was pounding now. Natalie, do not say things like that unless you mean them. I do mean them. She stood and moved to stand in front of him, her eyes shining in the starlight. These past days with you have been the happiest I have been in years, maybe ever. I feel like I can breathe here, like I can be myself without pretending or trying to fit into some mold of what a proper lady should be. You make me feel safe and valued and seen in a way no one ever has before. Nathan rose to his feet, his hands clenching at his sides to keep from reaching for her. You have known me for less than a week. You do not know enough about me to make a decision like this. I know that you are kind and honest and hardworking. I know that you found me when I was lost and dying and asked for nothing in return. I know that you have been nothing but respectful and gentle, even though we have been living alone together in ways that would scandalize most people. She took a step closer. I know that when I look at you, my heart beats faster. And I know that the thought of leaving here, of leaving you, makes me want to cry. What about Robert Hutchins? I do not love Robert Hutchins. I do not even know him. I was going to marry him out of desperation and fear, not because I wanted to spend my life with him. She reached out and took Nathan's hand. But I want to spend my life with you, if you will have me. Nathan looked down at her hand in his, so small and delicate compared to his calloused palms, and felt something break open inside him. All the loneliness, all the years of telling himself he was content with solitude, all the walls he had built to protect his heart from disappointment, they all came crashing down. Natalie, he said, his voice rough with emotion. I am 13 years older than you. I am set in my ways, and this ranch is all I have to offer. I cannot promise you the kind of life you might have had in St. Louis. I do not want the life I might have had in St. Louis. I want this life. With you. He pulled her into his arms then, unable to resist any longer, and she came willingly, pressing her face against his chest. He could feel her trembling, or maybe he was the one trembling, he could not tell. I have been falling in love with you, he admitted, the words coming out in a rush. From that first day when you looked at me with those blue eyes and said you were looking for a new life. I have been trying so hard not to feel this way, trying to remember that you were not mine to love, but I could not help it. You have gotten under my skin, Natalie Jennings. You have made me hope for things I thought were impossible. She pulled back enough to look up at him, tears streaming down her face. So you do want me to stay, more than I have ever wanted anything, he said, and then he kissed her. It was a gentle kiss at first, tentative, as if they were both afraid that too much passion might shatter the fragile moment. But then Natalie's arms came up around his neck, and Nathan pulled her closer, and the kiss deepened into something that spoke of all the longing and need they had both been holding back. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Nathan rested his forehead against hers. Are you sure about this? Really sure? Because once you make this choice, there is no going back. I have never been more sure of anything, Natalie said. I was looking for a new life when I got lost in that canyon, and I found it. I found you. They stood there on the porch for a long time, wrapped in each other's arms as the stars wheeled overhead and the night sounds of the ranch surrounded them. Nathan felt a peace settle over him that he had not known he was missing, a sense of completeness that came from finding the person who fit perfectly into all the empty spaces of his life. "We should do this properly," he said finally. "I want to marry you, Natalie. Not because you need somewhere to stay or because it is the practical thing to do, but because I love you and I want to spend the rest of my life with you." "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Yes, I will marry you." They were wed 3 weeks later in the small church in Kingston, with Doc Harrison and Mrs. Fletcher standing as witnesses. It was a simple ceremony, nothing like the grand society weddings Natalie had attended back in St. Louis, but it was perfect. She wore a white dress that Mrs. Fletcher had helped her sew, and Nathan wore his best shirt and vest, his hair neatly combed for once. As they stood before the preacher and exchanged their vows, Nathan looked into Natalie's eyes and saw his whole future reflected there. She was his wife now, his partner, the woman who would stand beside him through whatever trials and triumphs lay ahead. The kiss at the end of the ceremony was chaste, mindful of the witnesses, but it held the promise of all the kisses to come. They held a small celebration afterward at the ranch, with a handful of neighbors who had become friends over the years. There was food and laughter and music, and Nathan danced with his bride under the wide Utah sky, feeling like the luckiest man alive. That night, when the guests had gone and they were finally alone, Nathan carried Natalie over the threshold of their home, just as tradition dictated. He set her down gently in the main room, and they stood facing each other, suddenly shy despite all the intimate conversations they had shared over the past weeks. "I love you," Nathan said, cupping her face in his hands. "I will spend every day of my life trying to make you happy." "You already make me happy," Natalie said, covering his hands with hers. "Just by being you." They moved to the bedroom together, and what happened there was private and sweet and full of the kind of love that builds a life. Nathan was gentle with her, mindful that this was all new to her, and Natalie was brave and giving, trusting him completely. Afterward, as they lay tangled together in the darkness, Natalie traced patterns on Nathan's chest with her fingertips. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you had not found me in that canyon?" she murmured. "I try not to think about it," Nathan admitted, "because the thought of a world where I never met you is too terrible to contemplate." "I think I was meant to get lost," Natalie said. "I think the universe knew I needed to end up in that canyon so you could find me, so I could find you." "Maybe so," Nathan said, kissing the top of her head. "I do not know much about fate or destiny, but I know that I am grateful for every twist and turn that brought you to me." "Me too," Natalie whispered. "Me too." They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other's arms, and Nathan dreamed of the future they would build together. The years that followed were not always easy. Ranch life never was. There were droughts that killed crops and scattered the cattle, harsh winters that tested their endurance, and the constant struggle to make ends meet. But through it all, Nathan and Natalie faced each challenge together, their love growing deeper and stronger with each passing season. Natalie proved to be every bit the rancher that Nathan was. She learned to handle a rifle and used it to protect their livestock from predators. She worked beside him in all weather, never complaining about the hard work or the long hours. And she brought a warmth and joy to the ranch that transformed it from just a place where Nathan lived into a true home. 2 years after their wedding, Natalie gave birth to their first child, a boy they named James Nathan Decker. He was a healthy baby with his mother's blue eyes and his father's stubborn chin, and Nathan fell in love with him the moment he first held him. "He is perfect," Nathan whispered, looking down at the tiny face, "just like his mother." "He has your nose," Natalie said, exhausted but radiant. "And I suspect he will have your stubbornness too." "Poor kid," Nathan said with a grin, and Natalie laughed. James was followed 2 years later by a daughter they named Emily Grace, and then another son 2 years after that, Robert Thomas. Each child was a blessing, a testament to the love that Nathan and Natalie shared. The house that had once been so quiet was now filled with the noise and chaos of family life, and Nathan loved every minute of it. He taught his children the same skills that Tom Sullivan had taught him, passing on the knowledge of how to work the land and care for the animals. Natalie taught them to read and write, using the few books they owned and the endless patience that seemed to come naturally to her. Together, they raised their children to be strong and kind, to value hard work and integrity, to treat all people with respect regardless of their station in life. The ranch prospered under their joint stewardship. They expanded the herd, bought more land, built a bigger house to accommodate their growing family. Nathan's reputation as a fair dealer and skilled rancher spread throughout the territory, and other ranchers came to him for advice. Natalie became known in Kingston for her kindness and her skill with healing herbs, often riding out to help sick neighbors or assist with difficult births. They were happy. Not in the fleeting way of young infatuation, but in the deep, abiding way that comes from building a life together, from weathering storms and celebrating triumphs, from knowing that no matter what happened, they would face it side by side. Sometimes, on quiet evenings when the children were in bed, Nathan and Natalie would sit on the porch just as they had that first week, watching the stars and talking about everything and nothing. "You ever regret it?" Nathan asked one night, about 10 years into their marriage. "Giving up the chance at a different life?" Natalie looked at him, her face lined now with the marks of sun and wind and time, but still beautiful to him. "Not for a single moment," she said firmly. "This is the life I was meant to live. You are the man I was meant to love. Everything that happened, all the pain and loss and fear that brought me to that canyon, it was worth it to end up here with you." "I love you," Nathan said, just as he had said 1,000 times before and would say 1,000 times more. "I love you too," Natalie replied, and she kissed him with the same passion and tenderness she had shown on their wedding night. As the years continued to pass, their children grew up strong and healthy. James inherited his father's love of the land and became a skilled rancher in his own right. Emily had her mother's quick mind and kind heart, and she dreamed of becoming a teacher. Robert, the youngest, was wild and adventurous, always getting into scrapes but charming his way out of trouble. When James turned 20, he married a girl from a neighboring ranch, a spirited young woman named Sarah who fit seamlessly into the Decker family. They built a house on the far end of the property and started their own family, giving Nathan and Natalie their first grandchildren. Emily did become a teacher, taking a position at the school in Kingston and making a real difference in the lives of the children there. She married a blacksmith named Thomas, a quiet man who adored her completely. Robert eventually settled down too, though it took longer. He worked for a time as a deputy sheriff in Salt Lake City, before finally returning to the ranch and marrying a widow with 2 children of her own. He brought his new family home, and the ranch became even more full of life and laughter. Nathan and Natalie watched their children build their own lives and families with pride and joy. They grew old together, their hair turning gray, their bodies bearing the marks of decades of hard work, but their love never dimmed. If anything, it grew stronger, tempered by time and trial into something unbreakable. On their 30th wedding anniversary, their children and grandchildren threw them a celebration at the ranch. The whole community came, filling the property with people and music and food. As Nathan danced with Natalie under the same stars they had first kissed beneath, He felt overwhelmed with gratitude for the life they had built. 30 years, he said, holding her close. It feels like both a lifetime and no time at all. I know what you mean, Natalie said. Sometimes I still see the young man who found me in the canyon, desperate and lost. And sometimes I look at you and see the wise, weathered man you have become. But in every version of you, I see the person I love most in the world. You were looking for a new life that day, Nathan reminded her. Did you find what you were looking for? Natalie pulled back to look at him, her blue eyes still as clear and bright as they had been 30 years ago. I found more than I was looking for. I found home. I found purpose. I found love. I found you. She touched his face gently. And I would get lost in that canyon 1,000 times over if it meant finding you again. Nathan kissed her then, in front of all their friends and family, a kiss that spoke of 3 decades of love and devotion and partnership. The crowd cheered, and their grandchildren giggled, and Nathan felt his heart so full he thought it might burst. As the party continued around them, Nathan and Natalie slipped away for a moment of quiet. They walked to the spot where the old cabin had stood, the cabin where they had spent their first year together. A new, bigger house stood there now, but the memories remained. You ever think about Robert Hutchins? Nathan asked. It was a question he had wondered about over the years but had never quite dared to ask. Natalie shook her head. Not really. I wrote to him after we were married, to apologize for not keeping my commitment and to let him know I was safe. He wrote back eventually. He had married someone else, a woman from Salt Lake City. He said he was happy and wished us well. Good, Nathan said. I am glad he found someone. Me too. Everyone deserves to find their person the way I found mine. They stood there in the gathering darkness, surrounded by the sounds of their family celebrating, and Nathan felt a peace that went bone deep. This was what he had been searching for all those years ago when he left Texas and headed west. Not just land or success or independence, but this. A partner to share his life with, children to carry on after him, a legacy of love and hard work that would endure long after he was gone. Thank you, he said to Natalie. For what? For getting lost. For being brave enough to come west looking for something better. For choosing me. For building this life with me. He gestured at the house, the land, the people gathered there. For all of this. Natalie leaned against him, and he wrapped his arm around her shoulders. Thank you for finding me, she said. For saving my life that day in the canyon. For being the man I did not know I needed but could not live without. They stood there together as the stars emerged one by one, the same stars that had witnessed their first kiss, their wedding, every important moment of their life together. And Nathan knew that, when his time came, whenever that might be, he would die a happy man. Because he had lived a life full of love and meaning, because he had found the woman who was meant to be his, because on one hot summer day in 1878, he had ridden into Red Canyon and found Natalie Jennings, lost and desperate and looking for a new life. And together, they had built one. The years continued to roll by in the way that time does, sometimes rushing forward in a blur of activity, and sometimes moving slowly through the quiet moments. Nathan and Natalie grew older still, their children fully grown with families of their own, their grandchildren growing up and starting to think about their own futures. Nathan's body began to ache in ways it never had before, the result of decades of hard physical labor. But Natalie was always there with her healing herbs and gentle hands, soothing away the pains and reminding him that they were in this together, even the hard parts. Natalie developed a cough one winter that worried Nathan deeply, but she recovered with rest and care, and he thanked God for every additional day he got to spend with her. They slowed down, as people do in their later years. They spent more time on the porch, watching the world go by, and less time working in the fields. Their children and grandchildren took over most of the ranch work, though Nathan still insisted on helping where he could. He could not imagine a life where he was not actively part of the land he had spent so many years tending. On a warm spring afternoon, when Nathan was 62 and Natalie was 49, they sat on the porch watching their great-grandchildren play in the yard. The first great-grandchild, James's grandson, had been born the year before, and two more had followed quickly. The house was once again filled with the sound of babies crying and toddlers laughing, and Nathan loved it. "We did good," he said to Natalie, reaching over to take her hand. "We did," she agreed. "Better than I ever dreamed possible when I was wandering lost in that canyon. Do you ever miss St. Louis, the life you might have had there?" Natalie considered the question seriously, as she always did. "Sometimes I miss certain things. The theater, the music, the feeling of being in a big city with so much happening all around. But no, I do not miss the life I would have had there, because any life without you would have been incomplete." Nathan squeezed her hand. "I feel the same way. Before you came, I thought I was content. I thought the ranch and the work were enough. But you showed me what it means to truly live, not just exist. You gave me a family and a home and a reason to wake up grateful every morning." "We gave that to each other," Natalie corrected. "That is what love is, I think. Two people choosing each other every day, building something together that neither could have built alone." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the children play, and Nathan felt the weight of years and experience settle over him like a warm blanket. He had lived a good life, a full life, and he knew that whatever time remained to him would be spent well because Natalie would be by his side. The ranch continued to thrive under the care of the younger generations. James proved to be an excellent manager, expanding the operation even further and earning respect throughout Utah Territory. Emily's children often came to stay during the summers, learning about ranch life and forming bonds with their cousins. Robert's blended family integrated seamlessly, and his stepchildren grew to love the ranch as much as his biological son did. Nathan and Natalie became the beloved patriarchs of a sprawling family, the foundation upon which everything else was built. Their grandchildren would come to them for advice, their great-grandchildren would climb into their laps for stories, and the whole family would gather at the ranch for holidays and celebrations, keeping alive the traditions that Nathan and Natalie had established. On their 40th anniversary, the family organized an even bigger celebration than the one they had thrown 10 years earlier. People came from all over the territory to honor Nathan and Natalie Decker, the couple whose love story had become legendary in the area. The woman lost in the canyon who found her cowboy, the man who risked everything to save a stranger and ended up finding the love of his life. Nathan was 70 now, his face deeply lined and his hair completely white, but his eyes still held the same warmth and kindness that had drawn Natalie to him all those years ago. Natalie was 59, her auburn hair streaked with silver, her hands marked by decades of work, but still beautiful in the way that comes from a life well lived and filled with love. As they stood before their assembled family and friends, Nathan cleared his throat to speak. Public speaking had never been his strong suit, but there were things that needed to be said. 40 years ago, he began, his voice carrying across the crowd, I was riding through Red Canyon looking for a lost calf. I was 30 years old, set in my ways, and certain that I knew what my life was going to be. And then I found Natalie. He looked at his wife, who smiled at him with tears in her eyes. She was lost and scared and had every reason not to trust me. But she did trust me, and in doing so, she changed my life completely. She taught me what it means to be part of something bigger than yourself. She gave me a family and a purpose beyond just surviving. She loved me when I did not think I deserved to be loved, and she stood by me through every hardship and every triumph. Nathan took Natalie's hand. I am not a man who is good with words. I am better with actions. So I hope that over these 40 years, my actions have shown you how much you mean to me. How grateful I am that you chose to stay, that you chose to build this life with me. Every good thing I have, I owe to you. The crowd was silent, many people wiping away tears. Natalie stood and moved to Nathan's side, wrapping her arm around his waist. When I got lost in Red Canyon, she said, her voice clear and strong, I thought I was looking for a new life. I thought I knew what I wanted, what I needed, but I was wrong. I did not know what I truly needed until Nathan found me. He saved my life that day, but more than that, he gave me a life worth living. She turned to face him fully. You have been my rock, my partner, my best friend, and the love of my life for 40 years. You have given me 3 beautiful children, more grandchildren and great-grandchildren than I can count, and a love story that I hope our descendants will tell for generations to come. I was lost, but you found me, and I have been found ever since. They kissed then, surrounded by the people they loved most in the world, and the celebration continued long into the night with music and dancing and storytelling. Nathan danced with Natalie, just as he had at every celebration over the years, and he marveled at how she still fit perfectly in his arms. As the evening wound down and guests began to depart, the immediate family gathered on the porch. James, Emily, and Robert sat with their spouses, while grandchildren and great-grandchildren sprawled on the steps and in the yard. Tell us the story, one of the grandchildren begged. Tell us how you met. Nathan and Natalie exchanged a look, having told this story countless times over the years but never tiring of it. Well, Nathan began, settling into his chair. It was a hot summer day in 1878, and I was tracking a stray calf through Red Canyon. As he spoke, weaving the familiar tale, he watched his family's faces. The younger children listened with wide-eyed wonder, the older ones smiled with affection, and his own children watched with expressions of love and pride. This was his legacy, Nathan thought. Not just the land or the ranch, but this family, these people who existed because he had chosen to help a lost woman on a hot summer day 40 years ago, when the story ended, as it always did, with Natalie agreeing to stay and build a life with him. There was a moment of contented silence. That is the most romantic story ever, one of the teenage granddaughters sighed. It is not just romantic, James said seriously. It is about 2 people who chose each other and then chose each other again every day afterward. That is what real love is. Your father is right, Natalie said. Love is not just a feeling. It is a choice and a commitment. It is work and sacrifice and compromise. But when you find the right person, all of that becomes not just bearable but joyful. Nathan nodded. Your grandmother and I have had our share of hard times. There were years when the drought nearly broke us, winters when we did not know if we would make it through, losses that brought us to our knees. But we faced all of it together, and that made all the difference. The evening grew late, and eventually the family dispersed to their various homes on and around the ranch property. Nathan and Natalie were left alone on the porch, just as they had been so many nights over the years. 40 years, Natalie mused. It seems impossible that it has been so long. And yet not long enough, Nathan said. I could live 100 years with you and it still would not be enough. Then we had better make the most of whatever time we have left. They sat there in the darkness, holding hands, and Nathan felt a profound sense of peace. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Whatever joys remained to be experienced, they would share them. They had built something beautiful and lasting, and it would continue long after they were gone. The seasons turned as they always did. Nathan's health began to decline more noticeably as he entered his mid-70s. His bones ached constantly now, and he tired easily. But he still insisted on being part of the ranch work, even if it was just sitting in the barn and advising James on matters of cattle and land management. Natalie remained remarkably healthy, her mind sharp and her spirit strong. She continued to tend her garden and help with the great-grandchildren, finding joy in each new generation. On a crisp autumn morning, when the leaves were turning gold and the air smelled of wood smoke and approaching winter, Nathan woke to find Natalie already up and making breakfast. It had become their routine over the years, these quiet mornings before the rest of the family stirred. "Come sit," she said, bringing him a cup of coffee. "I made your favorite." They ate together, talking about the day ahead, about the grandchildren coming to visit later, about the cattle that needed to be moved to the winter pasture. It was ordinary talk, the kind of mundane conversation that makes up the bulk of any long marriage. But Nathan found himself treasuring it more than ever, aware of how precious these simple moments were. After breakfast, he helped Natalie with the dishes, and then they walked out to look at the land together. The ranch stretched out before them, golden in the morning light, and Nathan felt a swell of pride and gratitude. This was what they had built. This was their legacy. "I want you to know," he said suddenly, "that if anything happens to me, you will be taken care of. The ranch is as much yours as it ever was mine, and the children know that. They will make sure you have everything you need." Natalie looked at him sharply. "Nathan Decker, why are you talking like this?" "I am 75 years old, Natalie. I am not foolish enough to think I have many years left." He took her hand. "I just need you to know that you will be all right, that everything is arranged." "Stop it," Natalie said, her voice trembling. "I am not ready to think about a life without you." "Neither am I," Nathan said gently. "But we both know it is coming sooner or later, and I need to know that you will be all right when it does." Natalie threw her arms around him, holding him tight. "I do not know how to be without you. You have been the center of my world for 47 years. I do not know who I am without you." "You are Natalie Decker," Nathan said, stroking her hair. "You are strong and brave and capable. You were all those things before you met me, and you will be all those things after I am gone. You will grieve, and that is right and proper. But then you will keep living because that is what you do. You survive, you thrive, you love." They stood there for a long time, holding each other in the morning light, and Nathan poured all his love and strength into his wife, hoping it would be enough to carry her through whatever lay ahead. But it was not Nathan who was taken first. Natalie's cough returned that winter, worse than before. At first, she insisted it was nothing, just the cold weather affecting her lungs. But as the weeks passed, it became clear that something was seriously wrong. She grew weaker, thinner, until she could barely get out of bed. Doc Harrison came out to the ranch, older now himself but still practicing. He examined Natalie thoroughly, then pulled Nathan aside. "It is consumption," he said quietly. "I am sorry, Nathan. There is not much we can do." Nathan felt the words like a physical blow. "How long? Months, maybe. Possibly less." Doc Harrison put a hand on Nathan's shoulder. "I am so sorry. Make her comfortable. Be with her. That is all you can do now." Nathan returned to Natalie's bedside, his heart breaking. She looked so small and frail in the big bed, nothing like the vibrant woman who had shared his life for nearly 5 decades. But when she saw his face, she smiled. "Bad news?" she asked. "The worst." Nathan sat on the edge of the bed and took her hand. "You are dying, Natalie." She was quiet for a moment, then nodded. "I thought so. I can feel it." I do not know how to lose you, Nathan said, his voice breaking. I do not know how to exist in a world where you are not. You will figure it out, Natalie said, the same way you figured out everything else in your life. One day at a time, one breath at a time, and you will not be alone. You have our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren. They will hold you up when you cannot stand on your own. I should be the one dying first, Nathan said bitterly. I am older, it should be me. Death does not care about should, Natalie replied. It comes when it comes, but Nathan, listen to me, I am not afraid. I have lived a beautiful life, a full life. I found love and built a family and did meaningful work. Not many people can say that. It is not enough time. I need more time with you. We always need more time. But we got 47 years, Nathan. 47 years of love and laughter and partnership. That is more than many people get in a lifetime. I am grateful for every single one of them. Nathan bowed his head and wept, and Natalie stroked his hair the way she had comforted their children when they were small. They stayed like that for a long time, and then Nathan pulled himself together and set about making Natalie's remaining time as comfortable as possible. The family came, filling the house once again. James and his wife moved back into the main house to help with Natalie's care. Emily came every day, bringing her gentle presence and her healing teas. Robert sat with his mother for hours, telling her stories and making her laugh even in her weakness. The grandchildren and great-grandchildren visited, bringing flowers and drawings and love. Natalie held each one, memorizing their faces, whispering words of love and wisdom that they would carry with them for the rest of their lives. But most of the time, it was just Nathan and Natalie, together as they had been for so many years. He read to her, sang to her, told her stories of their life together. He held her hand and stroked her hair and told her over and over how much he loved her. I would do it all again, Natalie said one evening, her voice barely a whisper. Every moment, every choice, every hard day and every beautiful one. I would do it all again if it meant spending my life with you. So would I, Nathan said, tears streaming down his face. You were the best thing that ever happened to me, Natalie Decker, the very best thing. She smiled at him, the same smile she had given him 47 years ago when she said she would stay. I was looking for a new life, she whispered, and I found it, I found you. Thank you, Nathan. Thank you for finding me. Thank you for letting me, Nathan said. Natalie died 3 days later on a cold February morning with Nathan holding her hand and her children surrounding her bed. She went peacefully, a small smile on her face, and Nathan felt like his heart had been ripped from his chest. The funeral was the biggest Kingston had ever seen. People came from all over the territory to pay their respects to Natalie Decker, the woman who had become a pillar of the community, who had helped so many people over the years with her kindness and her healing knowledge. They buried her on a hill overlooking the ranch, where she could watch over the land and the family she had helped build. Nathan stood by her grave long after everyone else had gone, staring at the fresh earth and trying to understand how to go on without her. I do not know how to do this, he said aloud, speaking to Natalie as if she could still hear him. I do not know how to wake up every morning knowing you will not be there. I do not know how to go through my days without you beside me. But even as he said the words, he heard her voice in his head, gentle and firm. One day at a time, one breath at a time, so that was what he did. He got up the next morning, even though it felt impossible. He went through the motions of his day, even though everything felt hollow and pointless. He let his children care for him, even though he wanted to push them all away and hide in his grief. And slowly, painfully, he learned to live without her. It was not the same. It would never be the same. But he found small mercies in unexpected places. The way his great-grandson's laugh sounded like Natalie's. the garden that bloomed in spring with the flowers she had planted, the stories his children told about their mother, keeping her memory alive. Nathan lived for 3 more years after Natalie's death. They were not easy years, but they were not empty either. He spent his time with his family, passing on his knowledge to the younger generations, telling and retelling the story of how he had found Natalie in Red Canyon all those years ago. On a warm summer evening, very much like the night he and Natalie had first kissed, Nathan sat on the porch with James. "Tell me about her," James said. "Tell me about Mama when she first came here." So Nathan told the story again, watching the sun set over the land he and Natalie had built together. As he spoke, he could almost feel her presence beside him, could almost hear her voice joining his in the familiar tale. "She said she was looking for a new life," Nathan finished. "And we built one together, the best life I could have imagined." That night, Nathan went to bed feeling more at peace than he had since Natalie's death. He dreamed of her, young and beautiful in her blue dress, smiling at him the way she had on their wedding day. In his dream, she took his hand and said, "Come on, Nathan, let us go home." He died in his sleep peacefully, and when they found him the next morning, there was a smile on his face. They buried Nathan beside Natalie on the hill overlooking the ranch. The whole territory came to mourn, and many people spoke about the life he had lived and the legacy he left behind. But it was James who spoke last, standing between his parents' graves and addressing the assembled crowd. "My father used to say that life is what you make of it," James said. "He was a man who worked hard, loved deeply, and never turned away from someone in need. He found my mother when she was lost and dying, and instead of just helping her and moving on, he chose to love her. They chose each other, and they built something beautiful together." James looked around at the gathered family, 3 generations of Deckers who existed because of that choice. "That is the legacy they left us. Not just this ranch, though it is a good ranch. Not just the land, though the land is valuable. The legacy they left us is love. The kind of love that lasts a lifetime and beyond. The kind of love that builds families and communities and lives worth living. And every one of us here today is living proof of that legacy." The crowd dispersed slowly, but the family lingered, unwilling to leave Nathan and Natalie alone on the hill. Finally, as the sun began to set, they made their way back to the ranch house, where life would continue in the way Nathan and Natalie had taught them. Years passed. The ranch continued to prosper under James's management, and eventually under his children's management. The story of Nathan and Natalie became legend, passed down through generations. When great-great-grandchildren asked where they came from, they were told about the rugged cowboy who found a lost woman in Red Canyon, and the woman who said she was looking for a new life and found it in his arms. The ranch remained in the family for over 100 years, a testament to the love and hard work of its founders. Even when some of the descendants moved away to cities and other states, they carried the story with them, telling their own children about the legacy of Nathan and Natalie Decker. Not just that Nathan had found Natalie in Red Canyon on that hot summer day in 1878. Not just that she had been looking for a new life and found it with him. But that they had chosen each other, day after day, year after year, building a life and a love that endured beyond death and became the foundation for generations to come. They had found each other when both were lost in their own ways, and together they had found home. And that, more than anything else, was the legacy they left behind. The knowledge that love, real and true and lasting, was possible. That 2 people could build something beautiful out of nothing more than choice and commitment and the willingness to face life's challenges together. The sun set over the ranch, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. just as it had on that first night when Nathan and Natalie sat on the porch and fell in love. And if you listened carefully, you might almost hear their voices on the wind, telling their story to anyone who cared to listen. The story of a rugged cowboy and a lost woman, and the new life they built together in the wild territory of Utah, where love proved stronger than hardship and endured beyond the grave.